sustainable landscape expert, Del Orloske, who is going to talk to us about his D.O.T meadow installation method. So the Woodstock NY Pollinator Pathway is helping to create essential and contiguous habitat in our community for vital and vulnerable pollinators. These pollinators are at great risk right now due to things like the climate crisis, habitat destruction, and pesticide use, herbicide use, and fungicide use. The Woodstock Pollinator Pathway is a collaborative project between the Woodstock Land Conservancy, the Catskill Center, Woodstock New York Transitions, the Woodstock Environmental Commission, and members from the community, one of whom is Del Orloske, who's a sustainable landscape land planner and landscape designer. Del has a master's degree from the Conway School, and he specializes in ecological restoration of a variety of habitats, woodlands, wetlands, meadows, and creating outdoor environments which are not only beautiful and inviting, but ecologically sound and safe for both people and wildlife. And Del also lends his expertise to the Pollinator Pathway project very frequently, and we're so lucky to have him. So he's going to speak for a little while, and then afterwards there's going to be some time to answer some of your questions. So for anyone who's a little bit new to Zoom, if you move your mouse around, you're going to see a menu at the bottom. One of the options is going to say Q&A. So if you have a question you want answered, just go right ahead and type that into the Q&A box down below. And you know, we're so grateful for everyone who comes to all of these events, because I think for all of us, it's a really meaningful project to really help not only beautify Woodstock, but to help out our pollinator friends. And we have some other events coming up after this. September 16th, there's going to be a presentation with Chris Lehman from Fox Farm Apiary, who's going to be talking all about bees. And Doug Tallamy is going to be speaking to us as well on October 7th, and that should be really exciting as well. So thank you so much, and Del, over to you. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about installing meadows, and I'm hoping to have a, can you see me all right? Is everybody? I don't get any feedback there. Okay. I'm going to try to give a screen here. Let me see. Share screen.
Hey, Del, I'm going to share my screen, okay?
Okay. Do you have it?
I do have it, so let me share my screen, okay?
Well, I'll be able to see it, right?
Yes, you will.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to.
I'll stop the screen share, and then I'll start mine.
And go back. Go back to the beginning. Thanks everybody for being patient with this. We have a storm here and a hurricane. I think there was a tornado warning here. So how exciting. So we're going to be celebrating the Wildflower Meadow and how to install it. Okay, and I have to apologize. I came up with this idea of the D.O.T method of meadow making just on the top of my head, and it came from actually a survival class I was giving, and I was looking for an acronym, D.O.T. After I said that for this meadow making, I thought, oh my gosh, that's people are going to think it's a Department of Transportation. And then I thought, wow, that's okay, you know, because this is Transportation 2.0. So we have, you know, it's called the Pollinator Pathway, right? So it's another form of transportation. We're talking about transportation of bees and butterflies and birds and insects. So it's a better type of transportation. So, but I want to go to the next slide, please. So what the D.O.T stands for is to do the right thing in the right order at the right time. Do the right thing in the right order at the right time. So in terms of meadow making, that's really, really critical. Years ago, I was actually talking to my sister about this, and I recall there was a way of people thought that you just throw the seeds and all of a sudden you have this meadow. Next slide, please. So before we get started on that, I wanted to talk to you about the difference between a prairie and a meadow. They're very similar, but a prairie is generally in the west. You'll see a lot of it might even have connections with the alkaline. West of the Mississippi is mostly alkaline in general, and east of the Mississippi is generally acid soil, and we also have a lot of moisture here, which is different. Out west, a prairie could be a climax, a transition to a climax succession. But here we have all sorts of trees and shrubs and things that are going to be coming in to a meadow area. So it's kind of we have some technical issues here. So that's the difference between a meadow. A meadow is wet and it's transitional. And it could be a woodland meadow, a wetland meadow. It could be an open field meadow. So we're going to be talking a little bit about both, but mostly about creating a seeded meadow plan, and also about using plants, live plants as well. So let's go to the next slide. So how do we create a meadow? So that's going to be the question now, how to do that. And there's so many different ways of creating that. And we're learning all the time how to create meadows, large ones, small ones. I'm going to show you some of the projects that I worked on that were very large. For me, it was like 18 acres of native grasses and wildflowers. I'll show you some photos of that, as well as some smaller projects that were done by hand and using small equipment. So let's go to the next slide. So this was the meadow in the can concept was about 30 years ago, and I was talking to my sister about this, and I said, "Oh, do you remember that?" She says, "I have one. I still have it. I carry it around with me." I said, "You never opened it up and spread it?" No. She said that that she realized even then that that she wouldn't have to. What she had a dream of what the meadow was going to be, in terms of the richness of its biodiversity and butterflies and bees and humming about in the glorious color. She knew that that was going to happen. So she carries this little meadow in a can with her for the last 40 years. She's been carrying that, and that's her mobile meadow in the can. So, but this concept really put a problem into a lot of people, because they didn't have success with this idea. And meadows just didn't get off and people thought that they could simply throw the seeds on the clear land, and that's all there was. And it's more complex than that. So we're going to be going through that really quickly. I'm going to show you some of the steps on that, and we're still learning as we go along. So there's a lot of techniques that we have used, and I have done a number of them that were very successful. The idea is to create a sustainable, long-term, low-maintenance idea with a diversity of color and grasses that are a part of the whole mix. So let's go to the next one. Next slide. Okay, so where Larry Wiener, who actually one of the projects he designed the custom designed the seed mix that I'm going to be showing you. He said that you don't make a meadow, you set a series of natural events into motion and then guide the development. So that's basically how to do it. We don't take it. You're assisting Mother Nature, in other words, in the process. So by doing the right thing in the right order and at the right time, you can be able to work with Mother Nature in terms of her climate and change and her topography of the land and everything that's going on. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to go into 6 different areas I'm going to cover real quickly. Is site assessment is critical. You have to know your site. I'm not going to go into great detail on this because we already covered this in 2 other webinars that we did. So you can go back and archive and look at those. Then the second one is this seed selection. You have to pick the right seed or plants if you're using plants to create a meadow. And we'll see some projects of that. But the seed has to be a high quality. A lot of people put in a seed that's annuals to get that quick color. And what that does is it ends up shading the lower area so the grasses can't get established. A lot of the native grasses are warm season grasses. So they take a long time in order to develop, and they need that warmth on the ground. So we'll go into the maintenance on that and the process of installation that will help that grasses and the wildflowers to take hold and get established. So next slide. So the site assessment. I'm going to go through this really quickly. Is the site inventory. So you want to know what's on your site, everything that's on there, the existing conditions that are on topography. So look at the plants, learn the weeds, learn the invasive plants that you're seeing, so you can identify these when they come up in the meadow. Analysis. Think of 4 S's in terms of analysis. You have sun, soil, slope, aspect, and the size of the structures, which could be natural or man-made. So the sun, you want to get, is it going to be, is it full sun? Is it partial shade or part sun? You have maybe a few hours of direct sun followed by filtered light, or is it a full shade? So you have to pick your seed according to that. The soil is going to be, is it sandy? Is it clay soils? Is it silty? Is there a lot of organic matter in that? If you have a rich soil, that can be problematic to a meadow. You want to have less nutrient levels in there. A lot of times, even poor soil is actually a lot better than having a rich soil. Unless you're doing a woodland meadow, that's a totally different aspect. So slope aspect, it has to do with the north, south, east, and west, and which way it's facing. Obviously, south is going to be warm. West is going to be warm. But east, it's going to probably have a lot of morning the sun that's going to open up and warm the ground. North is going to be shaded, just like the structures. Think of the structures of the building, or it could be an outcrop. So those are the things you have to think about in terms of the size of the structures. So they could be natural, or they could be human-made. So think about that. Okay, next slide. The other thing about is the topography. You're looking at whether it's dry, medium, or wet. So I do a lot of restoration ecology work. and designing landscapes that are wetland related, and they call these wet areas obligate. These are plants that have to be there. These are so there's certain kinds that are specific to wetland areas. Then there's the facultative ones that are just somewhere in the between. Sometimes they're dry, sometimes they're wet, depending on if it's spring or in the fall. So those that have a whole different niche, and all those plants that are listed on below are the type of plants that you can expect to see in those areas. And then the upland areas are basically the dry areas, unless there's a stream coming down. So that would have a aspect of a wetland as well, or facultative properties. So we have, next slide, please. So another way of looking at it is wet, moist, and drier is basically it. So next slide. So these are our wetland indicators. So this is really important to see these. You know, there's sedges, rushes, and grasses. They call these graminoids. Graminoids are grass-like plants. So rushes, if you see rushes are round. I have this saying that I remember, sedges have edges, rushes are round, and grasses are hollow, all the way to the ground. So the rushes, if you see rushes in the landscape, that's a pretty good indication that it's a wetland area. Now, sedges have sharp edges on them, and there's all different kinds. They could be in the wetland areas like this tussock sedge, or they could be on the upland areas. There's a Pennsylvania sedge that's very low, beautiful little ground cover that grows in the woodland area. It requires dry areas. So sedges could be in either areas, but specific like tussock sedge would require a moist area. And grasses as well. So there's certain grasses that will grow near the wetland area, in the facultative area, and also upland area. So learn the kind of the indicators so you can, because these are kind of like soil tests for you. Even the weeds will tell you a lot about what kind of soil that's in the ground. Next slide. So one of my go-to in terms of seed selection are these three companies. These are not a recommendation for you, or I'm not endorsing them or anything like that. It's just I'm sharing with you companies that have been around for many, many years, and their quality of their seed is very high. And you can also, a lot of these, you can actually pick individual seeds. So if you want to add more seeds later on, you can actually work with them, and they'll give you the specific seeds, or they'll have seed mixes. So their catalogs are really good. I would recommend you get all these catalogs that I have there, and those are the locations where you can download PDFs of them, or have them mailed to you. Next slide. So you're picking out all the great, the seed selection has to be towards your property. If you're in a woodland area, obviously you need a woodland mix, or a edge of a woodland area. So you have part sun, part shade. You have to gear that towards your seed mix towards that. This is a mix that fulfills a lot of different niches. I'm going to break this down into two areas. These are actually recommended by a number of landscape designers, and even the county extension services in the Northeast. These are really plants that you can really focus in on. They're time tested, and they work really well. But there are lots and lots of more, a lot more flowers and grasses as well. So first, I want to just go through them real quickly. Is butterfly weed. That's a great. It's actually a milkweed. So the monarch will actually use the butterfly weed as a host plant. That's really critical. And also the black-eyed Susans. That's a good one to have in the mix, because a lot of them are biennials. they'll come up. There are also perennial ones, but they're annual, biennial means that it takes 2 seasons to come up. You get a lot of color from seed mix if you have black-eyed Susans in the mix. Oxeye daisies are actually not native to this area, but they are tolerated by a lot of people. They're very beautiful, and they're wonderful in a mix. They can take over though. And they're quite aggressive sometimes. I've seen whole fields of just oxeye daisies, so be careful with that one. The purple coneflower is a terrific one. The Liatris is another good. These are dry to mesic. Mesic meaning moist. Wild bergamot is a great plant as well. So and then bearded tongue, you'll see those in very dry and sometimes wet areas as well. So next slide. And grasses. Focus on grasses. Grasses are so critical to the overall development of a meadow, even a prairie. A lot of times in the prairie mixes, they'll have 80% of the grasses, and then only 20% of it would be forbs or wildflowers. So you can get it from 40 to 80 is a good mix to have grasses as a real important part. Again, a lot of these are warm season grasses. They'll grow and fill that niche in the warm season. A lot of the wildflowers in the spring and the fall, they'll fill the cooler season ones, and there's also ones in the summer. So these are really, really great ones. The big blue stem is a little taller, and there's also the little blue stem, as you see, that grows about 2 or 3 feet tall as well. Beautiful. And I really want to emphasize, do not take these out of the land, just have color of flowers. You have to have this, and this is the reason for this also, is that it stabilizes the ground. The root system that goes underneath the ground is going to net and create a lower maintenance. A lot of these are clump form grasses. These are not rhizome grasses like you normally see in a lawn, which choke out the weeds a lot of times if they're really tight. So these are there's spaces in between where on the surface where you can actually plant the wildflowers, and but the deeper down the network is connecting, and there's a mycorrhizal fungi that's connecting to all the whole meadow. So an Indian grass is a great one, Sorghastrum. That's a wonderful plant. It's a little taller. So the ones that are smaller are the little blue stem and the side oat yama. Next slide. So here are these are actually there's one slide in here that's actually in the Woodstock Socrates area, and it's just a whole meadow of this beautiful a little blue stem on there. This is another one in New York on the lower left. That's another area in I think it's in Westchester County. I was photographing this one. Really beautiful in the fall, and this is a close-up, and the sun just shines on the seed heads. It's just incredible. These are actually really hard to seed as well because they're a fluffy seed. They're not like the other seeds. So mechanical spreaders have some trouble with those, but we'll go over that in a little bit later. Next slide. So the other part is, we had dry to mesic. This is from mesic to wet, so moist to wet. So these are plants that will come up if we have like a major rainstorm, or like a couple of years ago we had like rain continuously. That was these type of plants would be able to survive in that, and they would flourish. The other ones would go dormant during that time. And when it's dry, they take over. It's their time to show. So here we have a New England aster, ironweed. A lot of these are in bloom right now, and monkey flower. It's really beautiful. It's actually really small. It's not quite as big as the blue flag iris. that you see there, and the turtle head, which I love. There's a pink one actually too, but the white one is the native one. And I would highly recommend going with native colors as well, because a lot of the insects and butterflies are conditioned to the colors of the plants. So that when you change the different colors, you can't see it. You know, they're on a whole different spectrum. So they'll have a harder time to be attracted to those type of plants. So here we got, oh, we're gone. So yes, you can go through. So the next, for wet areas, we have switchgrass, which is a lot taller, and also Canadian rye, wild rye. And that's really great for moist to wet areas. Next slide. So in terms of removing the vegetation, this is a really critical part. I wish I could spend probably a whole day talking about how to do this part. Because there's so many different ways, and each one has pros and cons. So I'm not going to go into that. We don't have enough time to go into each and every one. But I just want to briefly go through this. Black plastic is one way. Get as heavy as you can, 4 mils minimum. Or some dark tarp. You can just use a brown or green, dark green tarp and put it over top. What you're doing is trying to keep the light out. There's some people that have used solarization. They actually cook the top layer of the soil using a plastic. That's in the north and northeast. It's not as effective. Sometimes in the summertime you can get away with that as long as it's warm. But the idea here is to cut out the light, and that will diminish the nutrients that go to the weeds and the plants. You have to keep it on for a long time too. A month would be ideal. Actually, ideal would be the whole season, and to make sure that it goes down deep and no additional weeds come up. Cardboard is another way of doing the same thing, putting organic matter on top of it, like wood chips, or just plywood, putting plywood down. As long as there's no light, you know, if the ground is uneven, so you watch out for any kind of light that's coming in. You're going to have problems on the edges, so cover those as well. So another method that's kind of interesting, I've never used this method, but it's a fascinating idea, is the smothering method by seed. You actually seed using a drill seeder. You force the seed into the top layer of the soil and use oats during the summertime. And then about mid-September, you do a cover crop of winter rye and leave that during the whole winter. And then you would till that under really lightly. Got to be very careful with tilling because you're turning up weed seeds. There are probably 1,000 seeds just in a square foot. So every time you turn the soil, these dormant seeds that can last sometimes hundreds of years, literally. They can come up, and then they have the moisture and light, especially the light, and then they start to sprout. Mechanical, if you have a real standard lawn with no weeds in it, or very little, because the weeds a lot of times will go down deep, you can get away with a sod cutter. So they come with the mechanical ones, and there's ones that actually cut under, that you can force underneath, and then you cut it and then roll the sod. Give it to your neighbor if he needs some. Compost the rest. So that's a great way of removing it and exposing the top layer. Get a bed for the wildflowers. Road tilling, like I said, is very tricky. I've done road tilling only because it was available, and but you have to get all the roots out of the top layer of the plants. If you have like invasive plants, and some of those will go like mugwort, they'll go down deep. You have to get those to all the roots, and every time you break one, that's a new plant. So it becomes a real problem. You have to make sure you use maybe multiple types of solutions for this area. That is really critical. If you're going to do, if you don't have any weeds on the site that you've selected for a meadow, you can take off the top layer and rough it a little bit, and then that'd be ready for seeding. You still will have weed seeds that might come up. You have to keep an eye on that. You have to learn how to identify it, even when it's very, very young. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Next slide. So here's a large project that I did, well, probably about 20 years ago. This was about 18 acres of wildflowers and native seeds. This is the one that Larry Wiener, who is, I've gone to a number of his conferences at the Connecticut College. He's had one every year, and it's since the early 1990s. So, and he's written a book on the American Revolution. What is it? The American Landscape Revolution. I think he is the title. But a very good and knowledgeable person. These seed mixes we actually got from Ernst, and that we ordered them individually, and then we later mixed them. What we're using as a seeder is a Truax seeder. It splits the ground like almost like a pizza cutter. It cuts it. It drops the seed, and then has a little roller behind it that seals it up. So the only thing you have to get a person that is really skillful at using this, and we had to get someone from Pennsylvania to come up to the Catskills actually and use that. So next slide. So here's a close-up of that actual cedar we're seeing in that meadow that we did. And here it's cutting it. You see in the back there, there's a little pie cutter there. It's cutting it. It's dropping. There's a little tube. I don't know if you can see that on the slide. But there's a little tube that goes right behind that wheel, and then behind that is the rubber wheel that seals it up. So it's cutting it, dropping it, and sealing it up. And we did 18 acres of native grasses and wildflowers. And it takes about 2 to 3 years for everything to come up. So you have to be patient. And during that time, I included education. You have to talk to people. People don't know what's going on with it looks like a weed mess, especially in the early parts of that. So signage, we'll talk about that later. Signage is really important. Educating. I did a newsletter talking about all the different things that were coming up and photographing so people could identify it. So get them involved and your neighbors and friends so they know it. Next slide, please. This is a slide that I saw without using petroleum products, being a horse and buggy. I think it was, I don't think it's the Amish, probably Mennonites down in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, is where this photo came from. Next slide. So this is the same site that was seeded. This was in the beginning, 18 acres in November. We did a dormant seeding. This is in November. Now, November can be really, you could expect to have snow on the ground. So you have to really time it really well. We had a rain before that. It caused some problems. A lot of the seed, especially in the beginning, before we was able to calibrate it, there was an upland area that was kind of a perched water table that actually it dug too deep. So a lot of the warm season grasses went too deep, so they were never able to come up. So later on, he recalibrated it. So the other half of the meadow was actually came up very nicely. So this is what happens, and after about 2 years, and this is one of the reasons why you should have black-eyed Susans and other dot enforcement, I think, is another one that could be added for quick color. So bergamot is wild bergamot is a good one too. So this one, this black-eyed Susan is a biennial, meaning that it flowers. The whole life cycle is in 2 years. So this comes up really quickly. You won't get this the following year and the year after that. This is a one-time deal. It's like a flush of black-eyed Susans. If you live in the area of Woodstock, I just recently went down to Emerson, or past Emerson, but I saw on the side there was a little meadow planting that was done, and they had it was the Trees for Trips program, which we did over at the Seaonal Cornfield as well. Great a group of people. They're a great project. But they also planted a meadow mix in there, and it must have been about 1.5 years or 2 years, perhaps, that that they planted this, because they have a flush of the same black-eyed Susans all the way through the planting with the trees and shrubs. So next slide. So for smaller areas, this is another project that I did here in Woodstock that was a smaller section. So I use, you have to, the seeds, the wildflower seeds are so small. That's why I was thinking of the D.O.T method, because they're so small. And they're different from grasses. Grasses are going to be a lot bigger and heavier. And you see, like a very small amount is going to cost you a lot of money. So you want to invest in that a high quality seed, because you'll get the results. But you have to prepare the site ahead of time. So here I'm using what they call a carrier. There's all different kinds of carriers that you could use to mix to bulk up the wildflower seeds. So you want to mix the seeds about half of it. Whatever you have, the seed and the grasses, divide it in half, and then mix that with a 5-gallon bucket. Is what I normally use, and that will do a large area of at least 1,000 or 2,000 square feet, and in that one bucket. So you fill the bucket with sawdust. I go to the mills nearby. You find a place where you can get really good cuttings of the sawdust. Don't go to like Home Depot or things where they're doing pressure treated lumber. You want to get clean sawdust. So, and no branches or sticks. You see a few of them in there. So they have to be pulled out. And then moisten it until it's almost like a sponge. You wring it out. It can't have moisture on the bottom of the container. It has to be wrung out, like a wrung out sponge. And so it's holding moisture. At that point, then you can put half the seeds in the bucket and mix it really well. Now, you could also use sand. Sand is a little heavier. For very small projects that might work. Perlite and vermiculite is quite expensive and hard to get that. I've heard people use a perlite or a peat moss. Peat moss is kind of tricky. It's also dark, and so when you throw it, you're not going to be able to see the color variations. I like the sawdust. It holds the moisture just right, and I can throw it like broadcast it as if I was feeding the chickens. So you watch the amount of seed and practice and break down the process. So half of it, I'll show you next slide. So here I am. I cleaned the area. I'm using a rototiller just because it was available, but I had to get all the roots of the existing grass that was there. There was grass and there was some moss that was growing on that site. So but not a lot of invasive plants, which was really great. So we took out, we didn't use any herbicides or anything. We ended up taking and raking again and again to make sure that it was a clean source. And then on top of that, I used hay or not hay, it's straw. You don't want to use hay. Hay is grass and it has a lot of weed seeds. So do not use hay. Use straw. Straw is very flat, it's very light, it has light color, and the weed-free oftentimes comes in these plastic bags, and they'll cover about 800 square feet. One bale will cover about 800 to 1,000 square feet. You want to go very light. You don't want to cover it too thick. So after you're done seeding, you want to roll it to have a good seed-to-soil contact. In order to have that seed-to-soil contact, you have to rake it with like a light grass rake. Just sometimes even turn it upside down, turn it so the tines are up, and just drag it ever so carefully. You want to keep it to the surface, but you want to have good soil-to-seed contact. And then after that, you put the straw on top. And this is a photo that I took actually about 2 weeks ago of the site. So there's all sorts of things coming up. I think there might be a obedient thing that's mixed in there, and black-eyed Susans, and there was brown-eyed Susans as well. So it was looking really good. So next slide, please. So the method in terms of going along is you'll see these two perpendicular. So you take half of your seed and go like on the black line, just go back and forth and throwing it as if you were feeding the chickens, and make sure that, and look really, really careful where the sawdust, because you won't see the seed, but it's in there if you've moistened it properly. So go through the whole thing, the whole area that you're covering with that half seed. Take the other half of the seed, mix it just as the same way. You might have to recalibrate based on how fast you walked or how much you covered. So recalibrate that and then go through and perpendicular. So you go through the blue line, go back and forth, back and forth. Okay, next slide. So I want to show you what it looks like. This is actually from New Hampshire. There was a project that they did, and they showed the process, what it looks like. This is 1 year they took after it was seeded. So mid-June. It looks kind of weedy. People are going to say, what did you do? You know? And so you have to talk to them and have faith that things will come up. At the first time of the year, you might want to cut it to about 4 to 6 inches on the top. You might have to get a special kind of cutter if it's a large area. You know, maybe use a weed whacker or scythe if you can get into that. I've used a scythe. It's a lot of fun to use, but you have to be really make sure it's sharp and get into the technique of how to do it. So it's about 4 to 6 inches above. What is underneath is the wildflowers. They're protected. All the weeds won't go to seed and flower. So if they go to flower and seed, they're going to end up in the soil, and you're going to have problems further in a year 2 or 3. So the next one is in year 1, mid-August. So it's looking a lot better. So people that were like, saying things to you about, oh, what did you do here? Now they're thinking, well, maybe he's on to something. Next slide. So we're going to year 2. Now we got some early flowering biennials that are coming up on second season. Like I mentioned earlier, there's by mid-August, you have Rebecca and brown-eyed Susans, and you have Monarda or wild bergamot, the purple color that's coming up. That's really, really nice. So it looks like a really great meadow after the second season and by the end of towards the end of summer. So next slide. So now we're on year 3, early June. Look at that, how lush that is. So early June, it's like filling in. And then by mid-August, we have a lot more flowers. So a lot of the Rebecca or the black-eyed Susans, they're going to go to seed, but they're competing with the other flowers. So they're not going to come back like they did before. So you have, but if you have a mix of about 12 different varieties and some grasses, and make sure that you have a large percentage of grass mix in there. Like I said, 40 to 80%. Next slide. So, and what I had mentioned about signage, this is really important. Educate your neighbors, educate your friends. You know, this one was in Connecticut. I went by this meadow when I first saw it. It was, I like the metamorphosis. So they had that sign up. And a lot of the weeds, the flowers came up the following year, and they're quite tall in that area. So they have a lot of variety of colors and a lot of wildlife come. So, but we have our sign too, so you can use that as well. But get some informative signs about what's going on. Another way to do that is to use a bird box. A lot of this habitat is really great for bluebirds, and bluebirds would be a really great one. Swallows will wind up using the same box, but if you get a really good quality box, it has to be the precise size of the hole. I don't know what the dimensions on that are, but they're wonderful. You'll have bluebirds come early before the swallows, and then the swallows will come, and they're more aggressive. But it's nice that if they have homes, they'll coexist. So next slide. So we went through the site assessment, the seed selection, the site preparation, the seeding and planting, the installation of it, then the seasonal maintenance every year. So every year you don't have to mow, by the way. You can do that in the first early part, but by year 3, you don't have to do it every year. The only purpose really is to keep out the woody and tree vegetation from taking off in there. So doing a cut in the late, like November or late October is fine. Or even consider leaving the seeds up. It's very beautiful to see the grass seeds and the Rebecca and other Monarda in bloom. It feeds a lot of the birds during that time, and it provides a habitat. So consider doing a third or even a quarter of and cut it every year, rather than doing the whole cutting for everything. Then sit back and enjoy, and then start planning for next year. So go ahead, next slide. We're not done yet. How are we doing on time? You can't hear anybody. So
we're running a little over, Del. So if you want to speed through to questions as soon as possible, that'd be wonderful.
Okay, I'm going to go through some projects that I did, showing you really quickly. So I'm going to have you go through them fast. Okay, next slide. Here's a project in Westchester that was before. It was a wetland buffer area. Next slide. We laid it out with native plants according to the microclimates. We have ferns in the shaded area, and sunny area we have a lot of flowers and grasses. Next slide. We put down the middle a no-mow class. It's a fescue blend. It looks like almost like Pennsylvania sedge almost. It has that same kind of quality, but it only grows about 6 inches. You don't have to mow it. If you want to, you can mow it high twice a year, but it's a very soft, beautiful, almost like hair growing on the grass. It's really nice, and that's just conceded. Next slide. So here it's starting to take hold. You see, it's just starting the no-mow grass is starting to grow. Next slide. And here's another view. Next slide. And we laid it out with just a lot of the plantings, container plants. Next slide. And here they're all installed for the winter. Next slide. And here it comes in the spring, things that came up. So we have shade tolerant plants in here, a lot of ferns that's being shaded by the house that was 3 stories high. So next slide. And here it is in bloom. Next slide. Another view. Grasses are starting to take all. That was a very dry season, by the way. But they need to fill in those gaps. Next slide. And next slide. Here's a wetland area that we had to do. Next slide. Cleared the area. And the water was down. We can made a natural bridge. So we used what we had on hand. Next slide. And then we started using plugs in this area. We did seed in that open area on the left. We did seed in that area. All these are native plants, native sedges, and native trees that are in this wetland area. Next slide. And even the water, so it can percolate, we have to be cautious about that. Next slide. And here it was a year or 2 years later. Things started growing up. Some things that were already in there came up, and a lot of our seeds and wildflowers came up as well. Next slide. Ellie, next. And here we go. Yeah, is that it? You can go through them. Just go through them quickly. Here's the before of we saved in the front. You see that there was some wildflowers that we protected, and here was 2 years later. The wildflowers, black-eyed Susans. Next. I think we're ending at these soon here. And this is year 2. Yep, that's it. Next. So remember, this is a bird feeder. Go back. So we're creating living bird feeders is really what we're doing. So how are we going to handle this? Here.
I am just going to unmute and bring Polly's video up, and then we can start the Q&A session, okay?
Cool.
Hey, thank you, Del. That was great.
Good.
So some of there were some questions that were sent before you did the presentation, but I think you've kind of covered them. The first one is, can Del recommend a mix of seeds appropriate for this region, and what is the ideal mix of flowers to grasses? I think you pretty much
I did.
Said that.
Yeah. Grasses are really important, and they're beautiful grasses. You know, you saw those fields that are in local here. Yeah, definitely have some 40 to 80% of the grasses should be a part of your mix.
Okay. Should you ever mow a meadow? And I think you just talked to that point too.
Yeah. Timing is important.
Yeah, it says then the next question is, what is a good mowing schedule for a pollinator meadow to avoid impacts to birds and insects?
Yeah, it's early spring when it gets up to about maybe 8 inches. Then you want to cut it back to about 4 to 6 inches. That's what you want. You want to keep it because the underneath is where the wildflowers are, and you need to have that. Also, the ground needs to warm up. And it has to warm up because of all the warm season grasses that are still on the ground. So that should be a part of your mix, and make sure that they get warmed up in the early, especially in June, from June to end of August. It's going to warm up, and then once they'll take a while, so you have to be patient. It won't happen very quickly. It might take 2 years or even 3 before they see some. And if they're too deep, like we planted them, you might not see them at all. So be careful. They're very, very small. They can't have to be just underneath the soil surface, just very, very lightly, actually being pressed into the soil.
Uh-huh.
Next.
So what do you recommend to keep the tick population down?
Well, a lot of the invasive plants like Japanese barberry, if you have that growing, there a lot of these thorny bushes are invasives. You know, the multiflora rose, we have briars, you know, these wineberry is a type of raspberry, and the Japanese barberry. These are hiding places for a lot of the rodents that are carrying the ticks. It's not so much the deer, although they are responsible as well for carrying the tick. But that's what you have to do. And also, and when you mow pathways into it, it's really nice to have a mowed path into, so you can actually go in the center of your meadow. Do it wide enough. You know, if you look at thorn preserve, they do a really good distance in terms of like 8 to 10 feet sometimes. You know, just to make people feel comfortable, because the ones that are on the side are going to be leaning, especially on when it rains. They're going to flop over as they get taller in the season. So make sure it's wide enough. Next.
Okay. In the 5-gallon bucket, what quantity of seeds is in the bag? Is it a pound?
I would just do, I mix about half of it. I don't go more than the half, even less. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get to the bottom and mix the seeds. So mix whatever you have in terms of half of your seed, mix it in there in the moist sawdust.
Okay. And then that same person asked, I missed how you seeded the small plot. Hand thrown?
Yeah, I throw them out. I actually use bare hands. If I see some seeds that have stuck to my hand, I just stop and then brush them off. Some people will use latex. Other people are allergic to latex, so you don't use that. But the latex gloves are said to be help keep it off here, so you can keep throwing them. They're very, very small seeds, so yeah. But it's a lot of fun to throw them. Just think of the chickens.
Okay. I think you said to keep meadow mowed to 4 to 6 inches tall the first year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How high do you mow in year 2?
Year 2, you could probably do another mowing because a lot of the grasses are still trying to get up. So you can do that a mow in the spring and then probably late in the season if you want. But
so you're mowing to the same height, the same?
Yeah.
4 inches?
It should be. What's recommended is that you do. A good way to remember is think of 6 inches every 6 weeks through the season. Especially the first between year 1 and year 2. Year 2 to 3, you can cut back on the cutting, and even year 3 you can even skip a year and then do year 4. And
then she asks, what if I want to plant on a slope? What should I know?
That's a good question. I didn't cover that. A lot of times people use an annual rye mix or oats. Sometimes they'll mix it in there. A lot of the seed companies will not recommend putting rye, annual rye. There's perennial rye and annual rye. The annual rye will die out at the end of the season. So that would stabilize it. It'll grow very quickly, come up in about 5 to 7 days if there's enough moisture, and then stabilize the ground so it's not going to erode. So if you have clay soil, that's really hard. You have to be careful with that.
You're talking specifically about a slope here.
Yeah, slope. So if you have clay soils in the slope, you got some trouble. It might end up in the river. If you've seen our local rivers during a heavy rainstorm, they're like milk chocolate. So you don't want that on your site. So put the ryegrass in there. It's an annual rye. Put it in there, and they'll put it in. If it's flat enough, then try to do without it, and then make sure that the hay is on there. Not the hay. I'm sorry, straw.
Straw, not hay.
Not hay.
Is there anything different we should do for rockier soil? That is a large patch near the road we can plant. Rockier soil.
Actually, rocky soil, really a poor soil like that is actually perfect for a meadow mix. So you can actually use the small plants, so you're not creating a problem in terms of visualization. You know, you're not as you come out to the driveway, for instance, you have to have a view from 100 feet or 200 feet in both directions. So, but in terms of having meadow on that site is really good. You can actually just use it. Don't add a lot of topsoil. Don't even add any if there's soil there. Just rake it in and then make sure that it's covered and moist.
All right.
Yeah.
So that is the end of the questions.
Cool.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks, Del.
Yes.
And Ellie, you want to say something?
Sure, I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And if anyone has any questions or would like to connect with any one of our experts or find out more about our project, please feel free to check out our website at Woodstock NY Pollinator Pathway.org. We have a list of our upcoming events on that website. We have all the details on how you can join, and we really appreciate all your participation, and we know the pollinators do too. So thanks again for joining tonight, and everyone have a wonderful evening.
Good seeing you. Thanks.